Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. We are continuing with the standards in auditing, and the standard under consideration was SA 315, right? Identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment, right? Although the name does not include internal control, remember that yes, we are also checking the internal control, right? Because ROMM basically depends on the internal control. As we know, ROMM is a combination of inherent and control risk. Inherent risk where internal control is absent, and control risk where internal control is not effective. Right? So assessing ROMM without assessing the internal control would not be an appropriate thing to do. Right? That is how you remember that we are actually understanding the entity, we are understanding its environment, and we are also understanding the internal control. Right? So we'll have a quick revision, quick recap of what we have understood in the previous lecture, and then move ahead with the remaining portion of the essay. So in the previous lecture we have understood the objective of essay 315, which says that you need to identify and assess the ROMM which occur due to fraud and error at either the financial statement level or the assertion level, right? And how do you do that? You do that by understanding the entity, by understanding its environment, and by understanding the internal control, right? And what do you do after you understand these things? And when you actually assess the ROMM, you design and implement the response. That yes, if risks are available, right, then we need to see what could go wrong with that, and we need to also understand the likelihood of its occurrence, right? The likelihood of misstatement. Then the risk assessment procedure is the important topic that we had discussed in the previous lecture. So what do you understand by risk assessment procedure, RAP? The name itself says that this is a procedure to assess the risk. That means this is a procedure to meet your objective, the objective of this essay, right? So audit procedure performed to meet the objective is RAP. That means if we go on to elaborate it, then RAP is the audit procedure which is performed to obtain an understanding of the entity and its environment, including the entity's internal control, right? To identify and assess the risk of material misstatement, the ROMM, whether due to fraud or error at the financial statement and the assertion level. So that is our RAP, right? So you get the fragments, you get the broken pieces of the explanation. When you join those dots, you get the entire definition of risk assessment procedure, right? In short, whenever you want to remember what are the risk assessment procedure, just remember that these are the procedures which are performed to meet the objective, and then write down the objective, right? Now what are the components that help you to assess the risk? It is the inquiries, the analytical procedure, observation, and inspection. Basically these components are not helping you to assess the risk, they are helping you to understand the entity and its environment. Got the point? So when you inquire the management, you inquire the others in the entity, you perform the analytical review procedure with the previous year, with the industry, right, with the entity itself. Then you observe when you reach the client, and then you get into inspection of the certain things where you feel that these are the areas where there is a high probability of risk, right? Then what are the understandings required? For the environmental concern, you need to understand the industrial norm, you need to understand the legal and the regulatory factors, and also the applicable FRF. The FRF that is being applied on this particular entity. Like the example we have taken for the banking industry, it is the Banking Regulation Act, the RBI Act, the Cooperative Society Act, Companies Act, SBI Act, and etc. Right? So you need to understand what are the FRF, what are the legal regulatory factors, and the industrial norm. This will help you to understand the environment. Now to understand the entity, you need to understand basically the nature. When we talk about nature, you need to know what is the kind of operation that it has entered into, what work does it do, what does it manufacture, what service does it provide, right? What are the various segments, what are the various verticals of the entity, right? Then you also need to understand the ownership and the governance structure, the type of investments they are making, whether they are risky investments or risk-free investments, the way that the entity is structured and how is it financed, right? How did we link it? There are owners who feed in the funds into the company. With that, they perform their operations and they do the investments, right? Then you need to understand what are the accounting policies that the management is applying for this particular industry, for this particular entity, the rationale behind that selection of accounting policy, right? And you already know what accounting policies are, and they have to be applied consistently year after year. So you will also have to see the consistency, right? Then you understand the objectives and the strategies. Are the objectives reasonable? Are the objectives achievable? Are the strategies that they apply to achieve those objectives or to meet those objectives, are those strategies viable? Are those strategies in the interest of the company, in the interest of the public, in the interest of the depositors, right? These are the things that you need to understand when you want to understand the performance of the entity, right? Then you understand the measurement and the review of the financial performance, right? How is the company performing? If the financial performance is good, there is, on one end, if you think, it is a low chance of risk because they don't need to indulge into any fraud. But again, that can be a chance that maybe because of fraud they have had a good performance, right? So you need to judge. That is on you, and that depends on entity to entity, client to client, right? And at last, you need to understand the internal control, right? Because your risk, inherent risk and control risk, they combine together to form the risk of material misstatement, right? If you remember when we had discussed the audit risk is basically divided into three parts: inherent risk, control risk, and the detection risk, out of which now you have just two parts: ROMM and detection risk. Hence, ROMM includes inherent risk and control risk, right? Now, when you have understood the entity, you have understood the environment, you have understood the internal control, what is the next step that you need to perform? What is your next objective? Your next objective is to assess the ROMM, to assess what is the risk of material misstatement, right? Now, when you go on to assess something, you need to have the scope within which you will assess, right? Within which you perform your procedures. So your scope basically will be divided into two different segments. One is at the financial statement level and the other is at the assertion level. So when we talk about the risk or the assessment of ROMM at the financial statement level, then we know that we are talking about the ROMM that relates to the financial statement on the whole, right? And that would potentially affect many assertions. So in the financial statements you have a hell lot of assertions, right? So we are talking about that kind of risk that will affect the entire financial statement, that would affect many assertions, not just one, right? Wrong calculation of profit. So wrong calculation of your profit in the income statement could be a risk at financial statement level. Or inflating the sales figure could also be a risk at financial statement level, because when the sales figures are inflated, right, that could affect other assertions as well. Like if you have increase in the sale, your gross profit increases. If you have increase in the sale, your debtors increases. Your inventory decreases, right? The cost that you have involved will increase because you show the number of units consumed increase, right? So when you show the increase in sale, if there is a misstatement with the sales figure, that would affect a hell lot of assertions behind, right? So these kinds of risk or these kinds of misstatements basically affect the financial statement level. And when we talk about the ROMM at assertion level is when we talk about individual assertion at the transaction level. If the management comes up to you and gives you a data, right? For example, if they are giving you the data for the debtors, then you know that yeah, these are the list of debtors, so this is the total amount of debtor at the end, right? This is the aging of the debtor, these are the debtors, the provision that you make. So whatever calculation now you do with the debtor level, right, with the debtor assertion itself, right, that risk, and if there is a dispute with that risk would relate to the debtor, right? When you are calculating your loan, the interest that you pay on the loan, if you calculate that interest wrong, right, or if you have actually not paid interest, but you have showed the payment as expense in your financials, or you have shown extra interest, or whatever be the case. If there is a misstatement in the interest of the loan, then that would affect the loan account only, right? So those kinds of misstatements are the misstatements at the assertion level, right? So your suspect at the assertion level, or the ROMM, the risk of material misstatement at the assertion level, would actually go ahead to impact your nature, time and extent of the procedures that you perform at the assertion level itself. So if the assertion given by the management, right, if you do not consider the assertions given by management to be correct, right, then you will have to get into more than usual procedures, right, to get a confirmation or a clarification on that assertion, right? So when we talk about basically evaluation at the assertion level, then what are the things that you evaluate? First, you evaluate the transactions that has taken place during the year. For example, like the transactions, if we talk about sale of goods, payment of salary, advertisement expenditure, printing expenditure, right? These type of transactions that you enter into, they need to be evaluated, right? How do you evaluate the transactions? What are the things that you would consider for that? First, you would see the occurrence, whether or not such transactions have occurred, right? You have entered certain transactions in your books of accounts, right? They are present in the ledger, they have a journal entry for that. You need to make sure whether that transaction occurred, right? The company shows that, yeah, we have had a business promotion expense, we have had an event in the month of September, and that involved a lot of expenditure. And then you come to know at the end that there was no such event organized, right? So first of all, you will have to see whether the transaction actually occurred, right? Now, if you are convinced that, yeah, the transaction basically occurred, then what is the other thing that you have to confirm is whether the recording is complete, right? You will have to evaluate the completeness of that transaction. All the material effects have been taken, all the accounts that has been hit by the transactions, have the impact on those been shown? Is the total amount of expenditure or the total amount of the transaction being disclosed, right? That actually comes to the second part, which is the accuracy. When you check the transaction, you will also check the accuracy of the transaction. What is the calculation behind? What is the amount of the transaction, right? And then whenever you are entering into a transaction, then you also need to perform certain cut-off procedures. Now, what are these cut-off procedures? I'll give you an example. Whenever we go for the stock take, specifically, cut-off procedures are very important when we are counting the inventories, right? Or whenever we are seeing the sale purchase, cut-off procedures are very important. Now, what are cut-off procedures? Cut-off procedures are basically the procedures that we performed to evaluate and confirm the transactions that have taken place in the period. Cut-off procedures are basically the procedure that would distinguish the transactions on the period basis, right? So, for example, if during or somewhere close to 31st March, if 31st March is your year ending, close to 31st March, somewhere around 25th March, you made a sale, right? You sold certain goods, right? For example, you're manufacturing starter motors for the tractors, and you sell such starter motors to your client, and that client, say, is situated in Europe, right? You have exported the goods, and you have recorded the sale entry in your register this year, right? And then when the auditor went on to check these things, to check the genuinity of these transactions, they found out that the terms of agreement with you and the client in Europe, right, is not ex-factory. It is actually a CIF transaction, not an FOB transaction. So people who are actually appearing for both the groups, they know what I'm talking about. What are CIF, what are FOB? FOB are freight on board, and CIF is basically the carriage when you include insurance and transaction, right? That means when you have sent the goods from your factory, you will bear the freight cost to deliver that goods to Europe, right? And then when we judged the transfer of risk and reward, right, then what we found out that the risk and reward is basically transferred when the goods are delivered to the port of the client, right? And then when we went ahead, right, to judge the time lapse, the time required for the goods to be dispatched from the godown in Chennai, for example, going to the port in Chennai, being loaded on the ship, going to Europe, and then being downloaded over there or unloaded over there, sorry, right? And then when all the billings and all the documents have been cleared and it is there on the port, your client comes and receives it over there, and your risk and reward gets transferred to the client. But if something happens on the way, if the ship wrecks and your goods are lost, then the risks remain with you. That means the ownership of the goods are not transferred until the goods are delivered to the client. So what happens in that situation? That time lapse, the period of delivery, is generally, on a general term, it is 15 days. So if you have sent a good, if you have sold goods on 25th March, at no point of time is it possible that the good reaches the customer before 31st March. If the normal lapse of time is 15 days and you hurry up the process, then it could come down to 12 days, 11 days, but never 5 days. So the sales that have been made on 25th would actually fall in the next accounting period, because the risk and reward have not been transferred, hence the sale was not complete. So the sale would not pertain to the financial year ending on 31st March that year. Right? So that is basically the cutoff procedure. You see whether the transaction relates to the current period under audit or to the next period, and you have to segregate them. Right? Then we have classification. Classification into capital expenditures and revenue expenditures. Are the classifications done correctly? Right? So when you are evaluating the transaction, these are the things you check. Right? Was there any transaction? If yes, is it recorded completely? If yes, is the amount that you have recorded, is that correct? Is it recorded in the correct period? And is it correctly classified? Right? Occurrence, completeness, accuracy, cutoff, and classification. These are the assertions that you check when you are evaluating the transactions. Right? Now next is when you evaluate the period and account balances. The account balances at the end period, that means the account balances in the balance sheet. So over there what you check the existence. So when we are talking about some account balance in the balance sheet, does that account or does that transaction or does that particular head actually exist? Right? Then you will see the rights and obligations. What are the assets? What are the liabilities? You will distinguish between them. Whether the recording that has been done in the asset is actually an asset or is it a liability. You will then judge the completeness of that account balance. You will judge the valuation. You will judge the allocation. If it is allocated into blocks, you will judge the allocation. Right? Which block does it pertain to? So these are the things that you check referring to the balance sheet items basically. And finally, you see the presentation and the disclosure in the P&L and the balance sheet. Over there you see the occurrence of the rights and obligation, that means the occurrence of the assets and liabilities, the completeness of those assets and liabilities, the classification and the understandability, that means is it revenue or is it capital, and then the accuracy and the valuation, accuracy of the amount and the valuation. So when we talk about the assertion level, the evaluation, so we evaluate the transaction, occurrence, completeness, accuracy, cutoff, and classification. We evaluate the account balances at the period end by existence, right obligation, completeness, valuation and allocation. And finally the presentation and disclosure. Is it complete? Classification and understandability, accuracy and valuation, occurrence and rights and obligation. Right? So when we actually come to the presentation and disclosure, we club certain elements from the transaction and certain elements from the period end account balances. Right? So now do you get the feel when we are talking about the financial statement level and the assertion level? So these are the individual transactions and we are checking the misstatement at that transaction level, at that account balance level, at that account level. So if there is a misstatement in hitting that particular account, it is at the assertion level. But if there is certain misstatement that is pervasive in the accounts, that is that hits the overall financial statement at the overall financial statement level, that would go to the next side, which is at the financial level side, right? So this is how you basically assess the ROMM, right? Now, what are the risk assessment processes that you follow for the proper assessment? The process, the first, when you are actually assessing the process, the first thing that you check is the identification of the risk, right? You have to identify what is the nature of the risk, right? For example, if there is political interference in your entity, then that is a risk. But yeah, if politics is involved, dude, the company goes for a toss. You can do nothing at that point of time, right? So what is the kind of risk that would be involved when you evaluate the risk? What is the kind of risk that will be involved? Political contributions, there are certain illegal contracts, donations that you give, the bribe that you have to give, right? These are the associated risks that would be attracted if there is any political interference on your entity, right? So when you identify the risk is the political interference. How do you evaluate the identified risk? You evaluate it on these parameters, right? Or if I take the other example, then you have FDIs supporting your capital. You have FDIs into your investment. That is you are funded by the FDIs. So when you evaluate the risk of being funded by the FDIs, what is the kind of risk? You have the foreign exchange exposure. If the value of the foreign currency increases and the Indian currency falls, you are exposed to the risk of the foreign currency, and then you'll have to see for the hedging if whether or not the company has applied or has planned for certain hedging opportunities, right? These are the kinds of risks you need to evaluate. Then you will see what could go wrong when you relate to these risks, right? So basically what could go wrong is, if you talk about your expenses, if you talk about your liabilities, then if they are understated, right? That yeah, my liabilities, they are supposed to be rupees 10 crore, but they are understated. Now we show the liabilities at 5 crores. So that is the risk, right? That could go wrong with that risk. Your expenditures, you have made a lot of expenditures into certain field, but then you show a very less expenditure over there. That is the risk. When you decrease your expenditure, what happens? Your income increases, right? The other thing is when your assets or your income is overstated. The value of your machinery over the period of time has come down from rupees 7 crores to rupees 3 crores, but you still keep showing it in the books as 5 crores. So that is overstatement of your asset. Or when your income is overstated, you have a margin or you have the cost of production of rupees 10 per unit and sale price of rupees 20, but you show that your cost of production is just 7 and the sale price is 20. So what happens is your profit margin goes up by 13, from 10 to 13 rupees. So there is 3 rupee income, extra income per unit. So if you have 2 crore of units sold, then your income is inflated by 6 crores. Right? So that is what you need to see, that yeah, these things could go wrong. Then you have to consider the likelihood of misstatement. What is the probability of these occurrence? What is the probability of these misstatement to occur? Right? When you know the probability, you will know that yeah, if there are high probabilities, then there is high amount of suspectability that you will have to involve. Right? So the risk assessment process, when we talk about the risk assessment process, it has 4 parts. Identify the risk, evaluate the risk, right? And then you have to relate it and link it to understand what could go wrong. And if when you know that this can go wrong, then understand the probability of that thing going wrong. Right? In short, this is it. Right? Next you see the special audit consideration. We are talking about the risk that would require special audit consideration. So when we talk about the special audit consideration, right, for certain risks, that means those risks are material risks. Those risks are significant risks, and just because of their significance in the accounts, they would require some special audit consideration. So what are the kinds of risks that you would consider to be significant? Right? So if you find that there is a risk which occurs due to fraud, so if the risk is a risk of fraud, then fraud is basically an intentional act, and the person who has committed the fraud will also make a lot of effort to bury the traces of the fraud, right? They would not want the fraud to be detected. So it is a very well planned effort, right? So it becomes very difficult for you to sometimes analyze the fraud, presence of fraud, analyze the impact, right? So these kinds of significant fraud or significant risk would require special consideration. You will have to give in special efforts, special procedures to evaluate the risk of fraud and to also judge and check if there is fraud, right? Then whether the risk is related to the recent significant economic or accounting development. If something like that is happening, then again you will have to have specific consideration for that. For example, right now you have international Indian accounting standards applied in your accounts, in your financial statement. So as per this year, it is compulsory for the listed entities who have a turnover of more than or net worth of more than 500 crores. So now when they are involving the use or the presentation as per the Ind AS, then you know that it is a little complicated thing and a new thing that is to be implemented. Hence there is a high risk of getting it interpreted in a wrong way or getting it applied in a wrong way in your financials, right? So when you are applying Ind AS in specific areas, there is a possibility of misstatement, there is a possibility of going wrong. So for this again you will have to undergo some specific or special audit considerations to check what are the areas where you have gone wrong for in the application of the Indian accounting standards, right? Then you also see the complexity of the transactions. Now if the company has undergone any merger, any amalgamation, then the transactions that you enter for that amalgamation, for the goodwill entry that you make, the capital reserve entries that you make, right, the purchase consideration that you calculate, so these kinds of the statutory reserve that you continue, these kinds of transactions are complicated transactions, and since these are unusual, so there is very minimum probability that the management or the employees who are into the finance department, there is a little probability that they have encountered such certain situations before. So if they have not encountered certain situations earlier in their life, then this is a new situation for them, and this transaction is very complicated. So there is a risk of entering a wrong transaction in the book, and hence you will have to pay special consideration for those kinds of transactions, right? Then you check whether the risk involves significant transaction with related party. You always know that when we have a transaction with a related party, what is the kind of risk? That the contract is specifically negotiated. If you sell the good to other people in the market, to the distributors, you sell them for ₹20, but if you are selling it to your related party, maybe you are selling it at 18, right? That is a risk. If you have taken certain services from a related party, and for that service in general in the market value of that service is, for example, ₹10 lakh, but you have paid 35 to your relative, right? So these things needs to be checked, right? Then you'll also see the degree of subjectivity, the biasness that you enter into, right, in the measurement of the financial information. If you consider that the management is biased into measurement of certain financial information, then that particular area would require a different consideration, a special consideration, right? And then if there is some unusual transactions in the company, unusual, that has not occurred earlier, right? For example, if there is some abnormal gain or abnormal loss, then such kind of transactions would always require special consideration, because it becomes difficult to understand and accumulate those things, right? The effect in the financial statement, the display of the effect, you will have to see whether they have had a good effect in the financial statement. When I talk about good, that means I'm talking about appropriate effect, right? How to treat that abnormal situation will again be a matter of concern for the management and also a matter of concern for the auditors, right? So these areas would require special consideration. So what are it? Risk of fraud, any situation of any economic or accounting policies being changed, the complexity of transaction with related party, biasness, and unusual transactions, right? So what is displayed on your screen? Please have a look. It is risk of fraud, economic development, complexity, unusual transaction with related party, and the subjectivity, which is biasness, right? Then we have revision of the assessed risk. Sorry, it is the revision of the assessment. Right? So revision of assessment means change of assessment. So when you are actually commencing, or when you have advanced with the procedures that you have been performing, and in the process you find certain evidences, right, that would require you to revise your procedure, because you feel that, yeah, now there are a high probability of finding some other categories of risk, right? So your procedures, your strategies needs to undergo change, needs modification as per the requirement of the scenario. So in that case you will have to change, or you will have to revise your assessment, right? So that is all about assessment that we needed to discuss. Now there is one more topic that is important from the examination point of view, right? So you need to mug it up, which is areas to be examined for deficiencies and risk identification in CIS environment specifically, right? You know that you have a chapter, CIS audit, which is related to the computer information system, right? So what are the areas to be examined for the deficiencies and risk identification in CIS environment? Here it is on your screen. First is program development and maintenance, right? So when you are developing the program, right, programs are the written codes, right, which is actually executed for your other processes. So at the initiation, when you're talking about the computer information system, at the initiation, at the base level, when the programs are being developed, right, you will have to check whether they are being properly developed. You have to check whether after development, when they are utilized, are they being properly maintained, right? You'll have to check whether or not there is any addition or any deletion in the program, any modification in the program, right? Then you'll have to see the system and software support, that the software that the system is using is compatible for the system, right? So now if you have a very latest software and you're still running Windows 7 or Windows 8, that may not be compatible. Maybe you need Windows 10 for that, right? So this system software support is very important to be evaluated, right? Then you have operations including processing of data. So when your data are being processed, you will have to see whether the processing is done correctly. How do you do that? You have the white box, black box approach, if you remember in CIS audit, right? We are not getting into the detail of that. All you need to do is to realize and learn the areas which needs to be examined. How it needs to be examined will be dealt in the chapter CIS audit, right? So basically, what are the areas? The operation including processing of data. Then the physical CIS security. You know the physical damage? If the computer, the system is damaged physically, it results into the loss of data, and that is a high risk for you. So physical CIS security is also very important, that somebody takes away the hard disk and a lot of information goes along with it, right? Then control over the access to specialized CIS utility programs. Utility programs basically are the short programs, like you use the cut copy paste thing, right? They are utility programs. So if somebody has the access on the specialized utility program that you have incorporated in your system, right, then that could help him to get unauthorized access, that could help him to get the data out of your system. So you will have to examine those areas very critically, right? So these are the 5 points you'll have to mug up, which are program development and maintenance, system software support, operations including processing of data, physical CIS security, and the control over access to specialized CIS utility program, right? With that, we come to an end of the first part of the essay. The next part, when we deal with the internal control, will be taken up in the next lecture. So until then, please stay tuned. This is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you. Bye bye.